Good afternoon. There, now the voices are on. This is the February 24th, 2026 regular meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the United States to the republic for which is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Councilmember Santa Maria. Here. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon.
Here.
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
And Mayor Rouse.
Here. Very good. And Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
Mayor, there's no changes that I'm aware of.
Okay, I have a brief announcement to read. The City Council reconvened to continue the closed session this afternoon in the same closed session location at the conclusion of today's regular council meeting. This is a continuation of today's meeting and not a new meeting. All right, very good. And with that, we'll go to the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, you have some things to read.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 1, ordinance to regulate single-use materials, ordinance adoption. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending section 2.42.040, chapter 9.160, and chapter 9.165, and repealing chapter 9.150 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code relating to expanded polystyrene, single-use plastics, and solid waste reduction. Item 2, affordability covenant amendment for the Village Apartments property located at 518 through 524 West Cannon Perdido Street, ordinance introduction agreement. Recommendation the council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the city administrator to execute the second amended affordability control covenant imposed on real property with Turner Lighthouse LP for property located at 518 through 524 West Cannon Perdido Street. Item 3, approval of the fiscal year 2025 through 2026 agreement for operation of a county-wide library system and appropriation of county per capita funds resolution. Recommendation of Council B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 25066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2026 to increase revenue and expenditure appropriations by $15,221 in the fiscal year 2026 Library General Fund and increase revenue appropriations by $16,555 in the fiscal year 2026 Library County Fund budget for county per capita funds from the County of Santa Barbara for the operation of library services. And that's all on consent, Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. And are there any requests from council to pull items? Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will need to recuse myself from item 1, so when that comes up, I will have to actually leave for the vote, and I'll read at the time when it comes in, I'll read the reason for the recusal. And then I'd also like to pull item 5 for discussion. Will not require a separate vote, but would like to have a little discussion on that.
All righty, very good. Anybody else? And then, Madam Clerk, are there any requests online to pull any items?
There is one hand raised. I will just confirm if they wish to speak on a consent item. Oh, nope, hand is down. No request to speak.
Okay, very, very well. With that,
Honorable Mayor, we just need to take 2 votes then. So if we have 1 vote on item 1, so allows Councilmember Friedman to recuse himself and have a vote on that, and then he can enter the room. And
yeah, I have a comment on item 1 as well.
I got it.
Separately. I'd like to vote on that separately. So,
Sure.
Mr. Friedman, would you like to go ahead and make your statement?
Thank you. On item 1, I am recusing myself from this vote because it affects the economics of my employer. So due to a potential economic conflict of interest, I would recuse myself from the item.
All right, very good. We'll let you hit the road. Very good. And I would also like to vote separately on item 1, reason being that I don't see, I'm getting concerns from feasible replacements for some of the materials as well as amortization period that is undefined for some people that have a lot of stock of the materials that will heretofore be banned. So I'll be voting separately on that. And with that, can I get a, oh wait, now, we have item 5 as a comment as well? Okay. All right, very good. So with Mr. Friedman gone, let's go ahead and vote on item 1, if we could, please. Yeah? Yeah. Moved and second, Jordan Snedden, and may we have the vote, please?
Yes, one moment. I'm going to retake attendance here, so that this right here will just be attendance. This is not a substantive vote on the item. Oh, sorry. We'll do that one more time.
Kind of jumping the gun there, aren't you?
Trying to remove Mr. Friedman from this vote. Let's do it one more time. Okay, again, hold please. Okay, this should, okay. That is attendance, just showing that Mr. Friedman has stepped out. And now you are going to vote on the motion for item 1 alone. Motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Snedden. One moment and we'll take a vote. Okay, go ahead and vote, please.
Try that again, please.
She is temperamental today.
Love the modern conveniences.
Okay.
Motion passes 5-2. Friedman not present, and Rouse dissenting. Okay, very good. And with that, we can bring Mr. Friedman back in. And I guess we haven't changed the order of the council procedures, right? So we were going to, so we'll go ahead and do it as printed since that was posted. So with that, we'll go ahead and go to the report from the Finance Committee, and then we'll go back to general public comment and then pulled consent items.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a long Finance Committee meeting today, had 3 items. The first is actually an item later today. The Finance Committee received the Q2 financials for fiscal year 26 update report, and staff is projecting a $5.9 million deficit for this fiscal year, which is higher than the adopted budget. The Finance Committee also forwarded the recommended budget adjustments and salary changes to the full council for today. The second item, staff presented an overview of a proposed enhanced infrastructure financing district. This is a mechanism that works similarly to how the former redevelopment agency funding worked, with a tax increment from future property tax growth related to development. Because of the long process, limited revenue potential, and concern with future property tax dollars being taken away from the general fund, the committee did not recommend proceeding any further with the enhanced infrastructure financing district. Instead, the committee has asked staff to continue working with housing groups and consider a possible future debt issuance using the general fund or Measure C, and that will come to council in March for a full in-depth discussion. And then the last item was staff presented a proposal to increase the existing cannabis excise tax rate from 6% to 8%. The committee accepted staff's recommendation to move this item to the city council, but not increase the tax for cannabis purchases related to medicinal use, and this was a 2-1 vote with member Santa Maria voting no. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to public comment. We have 3 minutes at the dais for anything that is not on today's agenda but within the purview of this body. We'll start out with Robert Greenfield.
Don't move as quick as I used to. Sorry about that.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thanks for seeing me. Santa Barbara, there's a lot of reasons to come here, but State Street was always the crowning jewel, and we've all seen its downward spiral. We need to have a redevelopment group that brings people downtown. We could put a bandstand in and have music on Fridays and Saturdays. We could do a marathon. We could do the dining, where all the restaurants put tables in the middle of the street and have a dining day. We need to grasp it now, otherwise it'll just keep going down and down and down until there's not much left to save. I don't have a dog in the fight, but you guys do, and now it's time. A redevelopment committee could bring things to the table and get it done. In Delray Beach, Florida, it went from a small little nothing of a town to like the hottest place in Florida. Now, Santa Barbara has a step up on that because you're already cool. But we need to fill those stores up downtown, and get people to come downtown. That's the bottom line. Like I said, I don't got a dog in the fight, but you guys do. So a redevelopment committee would be great. Bringing things down, Jazz on the Avenue, you have the first Thursday. It's okay, nothing special. But, and the film festival brings a lot of people, more things like that, But anyway, up to you guys. Good luck with it. Sayonara.
Thank you. Okay. Elsa Granados?
What's that?
No, this is next speaker.
Mayor Rouse and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Elsa Granados. I usually address you on behalf of Standing Together to End Sexual Assault. However, today I come here as a resident of Santa Barbara, or the city of Santa Barbara. Late last week, oppression reared its ugly head in our neighborhood. We witnessed yet another instance in which ICE entered our streets to apprehend a person. We saw them mistreat, spray, and body slam another community member who was trying to help. And we saw some of the Santa Barbara Police Department officers standing by ICE as this situation continued to unfold in front of the PD office. Our community members are being traumatized by the way people are apprehended, by witnessing this in person, and by seeing them circulated on video. I'm sure some of you have felt this too. We must do something about it. I understand that there are limits to your official capacity when it comes to intervening in federal actions. However, you do have significant influence over how local law enforcement agency in the PD engages in these situations. Chief Gordon had stated that one of the PD's role is crowd control. Yet my understanding is that their responsibility is to keep the peace. Crowd control is very different from keeping the peace. Crowd control focuses on managing observers and protesters. Keeping the peace requires attending to the safety and well-being of everyone involved. If protesters escalate, officers can step in to de-escalate. If ICE's actions are causing harm, officers should also be able to intervene to ensure safety. I ask that Chief Gordon consider creating space for the officers to show their humanity and protect all individuals present. Day after day, we ask them to step into situations that are potentially harmful. I have seen their humanity firsthand when working alongside with them and sexual assault survivors. This is where I ask for your help and leadership as the City Council. I urge you to open a public forum, a town forum, so that we as a community can come forward and express our concerns to you openly. I understand that there may be some conversations already occurring behind closed doors, but not in the light where oppression needs to be exposed. The conversation should not be used for political expediency. This is an issue that affects us all. Thank you so much to all of you for your time.
Thank you. Denise Adams and Barbara Ireland, is she here?
She couldn't make it.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes then, Denise.
Good afternoon. I came today because I wanted to help council better define community and to address the greater Santa Barbara community of voters, taxpayers, and businesses that need to be heard. Because council is actively supporting, directly funding a local crisis against our security, our safety, our neighborhoods, and you're using our tax money to do it. Anyway, we need a process that promotes open dialogue and helps ensure that diverse perspectives are heard, including those favoring stronger law enforcement, not less. Imagine being one of the 2 officers in an active situation and being surrounded and outnumbered by angry agitators interfering. Who knows what any agitator would do? I know this isn't of interest to most of you, but it is to us. We live in these neighborhoods. And when there have been incidents of active aggression by the spectators, and there's been no action by the Santa Barbara Police Department, we're concerned. We are aware, and as you are fully aware at council, that I stopped notifying the Santa Barbara Police Department and the city of its scheduled activities because of leaks and because of the assistance of people like you. And that's inappropriate, it's unlawful, and you took an oath of office, and we don't quite understand your perspective, where you're coming from. We read closely Mayor Randy Rouse's opinion, January 30th, in The Independent, about what's required and expected of the Santa Barbara Police Department. The Santa Barbara Police Department chief has underscored that to some members of the public, but it needs to be heard by all members of the public, what the police department will and will not do. There are meth labs in some of our communities, including the East Side, which we know from the Liberty Street incident, where 2 people were shot in January, 4 were injured, happened to be my birthday, and I happened to be there for a barbecue. Very interesting. It's happening in the East Side. I've lived here 46 years. We can't continue to ignore it. So I just wanted to say that in my opinion and my observation, it's beyond time to have a greater community meeting where more people get to participate and know what to expect and not expect from the city and from the Santa Barbara Police Department. I appreciate that Kristen Snedden held a private invitational meeting where I learned something, but I think it's important for everybody in the community to learn what's going on and how the city reacts and to learn about immigration law. I've been doing this since 1984, since Ronald Reagan in 1986 passed the Amnesty Act. I've been involved statewide, nationally, and locally. It's time for everyone to be heard. And again, thank you for your meeting.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Jeff Schaefer?
Mayor Else, members of the City Council, city staff, and general public, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you again today, and I'm going to try to read this from my phone. It's the first time, so who knows what goes to happen. First of all, I want to thank you, City Council members and Mayor, and many of you for meeting with us already to talk about kind of our 3-year action plan to end the commercial sexual exploitation of children and youth. And for some of you, we have upcoming meetings. I just appreciate your time and you finding time to talk about it with us. We have groups of people that will be coming to the City Council just to keep you updated on the work we're doing, because this is really important work. We just, part of it, as we explained, I think before in public comment, is we're working with Noah's Anchorage and have helped hire a case manager specifically to work with children and youth who are at risk, and she has started. And since she's started, they have sent, the county through different organizations has referred 5 individuals confirmed being sexually exploited to NOAS. So we know as word gets out that we have a central point of care for kids and children, that the work is going to increase. So I just really appreciate your time understanding what we're trying to do. I want to highlight the work of our fellowship program and the students that have been reaching out to you. We have college students that are engaged in this work and learning about system change, and it's been really fun to work with them and to see them gain knowledge of the issue and be passionate about it. And you'll be hearing from one of our students today as well. What I would ask for is if within your districts you have members of your community that you think might be interested in this, or if you want to host coffees, dinners, like one-time events where we can talk about the issue, that would be phenomenal for us, just to continue to educate the community and build momentum on what we're trying to do. We will have a plan by, for sure by May, which will include 3 to 4 projects we're working on, and that's also where we can engage more people in the actual day-to-day work of what we're doing. Some of which is potentially a kind of family navigation center, which would deal with maybe even on the east side or the west side, we're not sure yet, but it would deal with kind of the root causes of what we see happening, whether it be domestic violence, trafficking, exploitation, homelessness, trying to get more resources to families, housing insecurity, even some of the issues we're talking about, safety related to ICE and immigration, trying to help community members deal with some of those issues that come up, because what happens is that people are less likely to come and receive services if they're afraid to come out and talk to people that have resources. Quick shout out to and thanks to SBPD and to Barbara Anderson for being a part of our plan, and Commander Payne. It's really important to also have all perspectives, so thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mark Redmond?
Hello, Your Honor, Mayor Randy, and all the council members, Eric, Wendy, Oscar, Kristen, Mike, and Megan. I have a niece in St. Joe, Missouri, Megan Redmond. My main focus right now is my podcast, because I go to the drug and alcohol meetings, and I'm seeing children still 8 to 10 now a month dying of the overdose of fentanyl mixed in dirty cocaine, heroin, and ecstasy is not ecstasy, it's death. I tell them, if you get anything off the street, even if it's from your sister or brother, put it in the dumpster. And I don't want any more dying like my nephew at 25 in San Francisco at a party. When my sister-in-law told me that, I said, what? I thought it would be a car wreck. It was accidental. 1 pill kills. So also, I want to address what's going on in the city. I believe in recycling, reusing. I don't believe in all this waste. And make sure you recycle and separate your trash from your recycling. All I know is I am running for mayor, and if I don't have the numbers in October, I'm going to throw all my weight to Eric, because I have most of the same principles and values and concerns he does. And here's to Trader Joe's. All I know is that I want to make a difference in this city. I want it to be the jewel of Southern California. I'm tired of everyone saying, oh, look at this. They got protests in the streets. Well, I've gone to those protests, and they're peaceful. I don't see any disruption. I don't see all of the anger. I just see that they're disappointed. And the economy, there was just a poll out last night. 74% of Americans believe that the Trump administration is not handling the economy correctly. Grocery prices are up. Gas prices are down. But there's a lot of things wrong, and he's got these people in masks going out and murdering people in states that he lost to, Minnesota, California, whatever. I think it's wrong. And we need to have our police force take care of it, not this ICE. This is wrong, and we're democracy. We're not an oligarchy. Our last king was King George III. He was crazy, and I think Trump's copying him. And today, that's a clown show tonight, State of the Union. I'm going to watch it and laugh, because everything he says, about 90% of it is false. Whoever voted for Trump, don't ever vote for him again. He's not going to change our Constitution and make it where he can run again. And I think the white people were afraid that the minorities were taking over, and they voted for him. And they voted wrong. I'll tell you what, I don't support Trump. Amen, hallelujah. Let's make this a great day. We're going to have 80 degrees on Wednesday, and by Friday, 85 degrees. We're having summer weather in the winter, so climate change is real. This is Mark Rittman, Arizona, Santa Barbara, out.
All right. This next name I'm having trouble reading. Starts with an M and then Tortoledo. You got to help me out with this one. Thank you.
It's Mavel, or Mavel. So Mayor Rousey, members of the City Council, and members of the public, my name is Mavel Tortoledo, and for more than 15 years, I have walked alongside vulnerable youth and young adults in this community. I started my work as a youth counselor and then advocate and a direct support provider, and now supporting staff that are working alongside transitional age youth. Many of the young people we work with have experienced homelessness, exploitation, and human trafficking. I'm here today on behalf of those young people and the frontline workers who stand beside them every day. I came here to ask that we continue strengthening our response to human trafficking in Santa Barbara. Trafficking does not begin with abduction. It often begins with unmet needs, a place to sleep, food, and safety, and belonging. I have sat down with young people who believe someone was helping them survive, only to realize that they had been manipulated, controlled, and exploited. By the time that they were ready to get that support, trust had been shattered and trauma has run deep. Yet I have also witnessed healing. Most recently, I have seen the powerful impact of a warm handoff between our DA advocates and SBPD. Moments when survivors were not treated as cases, but as human beings. When an officer stands beside our advocates and says, we are here for you. You are in charge. To a survivor, they feel seen, believed, and supported. Those moments can determine whether someone accepts help or retreats back into survival. This work matters because safety alone is not enough. Dignity, trust, and connections are what help survivors begin again. The organization I work for daily provides stability, trauma-informed care, and a road towards independence, but we could not do this alone. I urge the City Council to continue investing in prevention, survivor-centered services, and cross-agency collaboration. This will ensure that our young people encounter our system are met with compassion, coordination, and care. And I appreciate everything that you guys have been doing so far. If we believe that this cannot touch our lives, we are mistaken. Survivors can be anyone that we know. Thank you for your time and leadership and your commitment to our community.
Thank you. Okay, Jacqueline McDonald.
Hello, City Council members and Mayor. I apologize in advance for my voice. I was away at camp this weekend and came back with everything but my voice. My name is Jacqueline McDonald. I'm a junior at Westmont College. I am one of those fellows that Jeff had mentioned previously. Through my time at Westmont, I have been spending a lot of time with the unhoused community through a club called Bread of Life. This is where us as a group of students are able to go to the rescue mission in Santa Barbara and spend time with the unhoused community. We spend a lot of time with fellowship, prayer, reading the Bible together, and worshiping together. That time with them has been really foundational for me as a Christian and as a young adult. As I mentioned, I am also an intern with KCI. Our organization is working together to end the commercial and sexual exploitation of children. We are a Christian organization that is aiming to bring the community together in order to end this issue. As Jeff mentioned previously, we are currently working on a 3-year action plan to end CSEC in Santa Barbara and hopefully in the county. I'm here to speak on behalf of Kingdom Causes to raise awareness on this topic. CSEC cannot be solved with just our nonprofit alone. In order to stop CSEC, we need to understand how this affects our county, Santa Barbara. Commercial sexual exploitation of children is a broad term for ways of inflicting sexual abuse on children under the ages of 18 for purpose of material or financial gain. This includes sex trafficking, coercing a child into survival sex, forced marriage, or child sex abuse material known as child pornography. CSEC happens through grooming. Predators seek out vulnerable youth, build relationships, and seek to meet their needs. There are many risk factors that we've been able to identify, but a few of them are an unstable home environment, housing instability, homelessness, physical, verbal, or sexual abuse, lack of access to resources or education, being involved in the system, or frequent absences in school, foster care, group homes, and youth shelters. In conclusion, CSEC cannot be stopped by just Kingdom Causes. We as a community, a county, need to come together to protect our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Ashley Farrell?
Go Westmont Warriors.
Hi, good afternoon. Members of the council, my name is Ashley Farrell. I stand before you today as a concerned citizen of this community, a community I love and a community I'm deeply worried about. Our local law enforcement and Santa Barbara Police Department and Sheriff's Department have repeatedly assured us they are not collaborating with ICE, and yet time and time again, the evidence tells a different story. The gap between what we are told and what we witness with our eyes is growing wider by the day. We see people being pulled from their annual immigration appointments following due process. We see students targeted, people profiled on our streets, not for what they've done, but for what they look like. We see untrained, unvetted individuals operating without identification, without body cameras, and it's only when community intervenes that the truth emerges from beneath lies we are being told. To our local law enforcement, you are being paid by this community to protect this community. These are your neighbors, they pay their taxes, they deserve your protection, not your complicity. Meanwhile, our tax dollars, tens of billions, are not going to schools or healthcare. They are building facilities without bathrooms, kitchens, basic human accommodation, facilities where people are fed rotten food, given dirty water, contracting diseases, and dying. If left unchecked, this will collapse the very economies that sustain us all. But communities across the country are standing up. People of conscience are saying enough. So tonight I ask the council directly, what are you willing to do to protect the people of Santa Barbara from these egregious acts? We are asking for moral courage. We're asking for transparency. We're asking for action, because silence in the face of injustice is complicity, and this community will not be complicit. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there speakers online, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 3 speakers. We have Karen Rice, Ana Garcia, and Aaron Ashland. Karen Rice, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for your time. I am here speaking up about harms that are being done to our community daily by ICE agents. Just last week, I personally witnessed ICE vehicles driving over 90 miles an hour on the highway through our community with someone in the back of their car who they had violently attacked. My question for you as City Council, and my question that I would love for you to put forward to our law enforcement, is what is the point at which they would step in, our local law enforcement would step in and stop what ICE is doing? So for example, if our local law enforcement was there doing quote unquote crowd control, and then they saw ICE, say, pointing guns at people innocently expressing their First Amendment rights, if they saw them violently apprehending someone, if they saw them pushing someone down into the cement so that they couldn't breathe, if they saw that happen, is there any point at which they would intervene? That's a genuine question I have. I hope that there is, but I know that we have to practice our willingness to stand up for each other. That should be built into law enforcement, but we know on the ground it's not. But I think that would be my question that I would ask y'all to ask the sheriff, to ask the chief of police. What is a line? What is the thing that an ICE agent, or someone who claims to be an ICE agent, who is not identifiable, but what is the line at which they would step in to actually protect our community? Because we are getting closer and closer to an irrevocable harm already, although of course we know that families being ripped apart is already an irrevocable harm. We know that people being stolen off the street is already an irrevocable harm. But that is my question. What would it take? And if there's no answer for when our local law enforcement would step in to stop ICE, that is a huge problem. And so I would urge you to ask those questions.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Ana Garcia. Ana Garcia, please go ahead.
Hello. I was intending to attend the Police and Fire Commission this coming Thursday. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was intending to attend the Police and Fire Commission Thursday, but their meeting was suddenly canceled today. So now I'm here to demand that the Santa Barbara Police Department immediately end all collaboration and support of U.S. Immigration and Customs enforcement operations in our community. SBPD must choose. Will you stand with the people of Santa Barbara, or will you stand with an agency that separates families and spreads fear? You cannot claim to build trust with us while your actions undermine the safety and dignity of your own residents. Let's be clear, the violence begins with ICE raids, detention, and family separation. Community members who respond to these incidents to document, organize, and to protect their neighbors are not the problem. We cannot allow a narrative where Santa Barbara residents reacting to harm at the hands of an illegitimate secret police are scrutinized more than the violation of our human and constitutional rights by ICE. Do not criminalize community defense while normalizing state-sanctioned violence. This erosion of trust makes families afraid to call for help. It makes victims hesitant to report crimes, and that does not make us safer. We are calling on the Santa Barbara City Council to hold SBPD accountable by passing binding enforceable policy protections and revising budgetary allocations to better align with providing community safety resources that are actually for the people. We want you to reallocate funding toward real safety, meaning things like community-based violence prevention, local defense networks, and rapid response systems that actually protect our community members, and not just in relation to ICE, but also for mental health crises and for youth programs, especially since most of that funding is going to PAL. Immigrant safety is community safety. Public trust is public safety. No more collusion, no more silence. Stand with the people that you serve. And for everybody listening, don't forget to visit justice.gov/Epstein and see what Trump and his fascist regime have done to our most vulnerable children. Stop trafficking by arresting the criminals and traitors running the government.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Our final speaker is Aaron Ashland. Aaron Ashland, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm joining you by Zoom as a downtown business owner and a concerned member of this community. It sickens me to think that our children, or the children in our city, may be being hunted and exploited by drug cartels and organized predators whose only goal is profit. The idea that a vulnerable child, especially one from a single parent or underprivileged family, could be manipulated and pulled into that world is horrifying. I was told something recently that made my skin crawl. I learned that the average life expectancy of a child who has been trafficked is around 2 years. So let's think about that. A 13-year-old child might only live to see 15. That should stop every one of us in our tracks. I've also been told that about 6 months ago, of the 25 children at Noah's Anchorage who were known victims, our police department did not have a file on any one of them. Now, some of them weren't from Santa Barbara, so I get it, but a couple of them were. If that information is accurate, we need to play catch up immediately. For years, we've heard that we didn't have the resources. If that was true, then we need to fix it. If we now have more resources available, then protecting our children must be a priority. I want to know that our police department is informed, trained, proactive, and actively pursuing anyone who would exploit a child. No child should be left to face organized criminal networks alone. They need us to be serious, they need us to be coordinated, and they need us to act. We need to help Jeff, Kayla, and their team find resources to try and heal the damage that has already been done, and our police department's commitment to work towards preventing this from happening again. Thank you for your time and commitment to our great city.
Okay, further speakers?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. With that, we will close public comment and move on to, did you have a question, Ms. Sid? Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Realizing this isn't agendized, but given that we've had a lot of comment and calls for how to address or maybe refine our policies, how would you advise that we move forward with engaging community more openly in that conversation?
So we have had a number of conversations with some community members who've been directly involved in these incidents recently. And the council last summer gave us direction, and we brought back a resolution that sort of clarified what the police department's policies and protocols are, as well as our city protocols around immigration enforcement. We are looking at a number of maybe updates to that resolution. We currently are planning to bring that resolution back on March 10th. We're working through that and are happy to engage in other conversations or hear other feedback about ways that the police department can more effectively support our community while also balancing our legal requirements as government officials and, you know, respecting those boundaries as well. So always happy to engage in conversation with community members and will continue to do so. And that will, I think we're tentatively scheduled for March 10th to bring that back.
Thank you so much for that update.
All right, very good. And with that, we're going to go back to the consent items, as that closes public comment. And item 5 is, Mr. Friedman, I believe you pulled that?
Yes, thank you. This is an important issue relating to housing, and there's a lot of over $500,000 in transferring. So I wanted to highlight this one in light of a forum that some of us attended last week on homeless prevention. And if staff, if you could give just a general overview of what this item is and what the funds are being transferred for.
Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Friedman, thank you for the opportunity to share more information about our tenant-based rental assistance program. It is a program that we've had in place in the city of Santa Barbara since 2012. We use federal home dollars and funding to support that program and have for its entirety. So this council agenda report and the recommendations before you are specifically to deploy funds to organizations that facilitate these programs to support individuals who formerly experienced homelessness remain in their housing unit. So it has been a steady part of our homelessness prevention programs in the city of Santa Barbara, and it's critical to be able to have these folks remain in housing as well as help people be housed as part of these, as part of case management and other support that these agencies provide.
Thank you. And the reason I highlighted this was a few of us were at a forum last week by put on by the Women's Fund on homeless prevention, keeping people in their homes. And there was a lot of information presented that with the tax bill that passed, the effects are not going to, some of the policies are only going to take effect in January of next year, and it's going to reduce Section 8, which is very similar to this, and some of this might even be supplementing to that degree. So what are your thoughts on what we can do going forward in terms of preparing for what's going to be coming in January, so literally dozens and hundreds of people aren't losing their homes?
Councilmember Friedman, we have a couple of federal administration policies and directions that we are bracing for impact. One of those is policies regarding support for mixed immigration status households. So there's been a federal directive on that there's support cannot be directed to mixed status households. And our latest numbers from the Housing Authority alone is that we have 148 households that would be impacted, so no longer being able to support those households through the Section 8 voucher program. We also are really looking to have the final determination around the support for the emergency housing voucher program, which is another 200 plus individuals in the city of Santa Barbara. We were one of the cities that excelled at accessing vouchers through that voucher program and being able to deploy them to households in need. So we have, I will say, exponentially a number higher than other municipalities, and having that support be discontinued would be dramatic. So we don't yet know what our FY26 allocation would be through the federal home program, but we are looking and discussing among staff how we can deploy those dollars as much as we can to increase the allocation that we would have with the tenant-based rental assistance agency supports.
Since this item isn't agendized, I just want to get that information out, but also the fact that we don't even know what the home reauthorization is going to be, so this option here might not be available next year. So as part of today's passing this item, I was speaking with Ms. McAdoo, and if we could give direction to our staff to work with our housing providers, local philanthropy, as well as the business community over the next 10 months to try to come up with ideas and solutions so that we're using this next 10 months to ensure that when January 1st comes, that there are plans in place and more resources in place to prevent those who are going to be at risk of losing their homes. So that would be my ask, if we could give that direction to staff in addition to passing this item. Thank you. And I'll move the item if we need to, with that extra part.
Oh, well, you're not voting on it separately, so we have to do the balance of the consent calendar
Okay.
anyway, other than item 1. So can I get a motion for that? Moved by Harmon. You're still here. And seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Friedman. May we have the vote, please, Madam Clerk?
Very good. This is a motion by Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman for the balance of the consent calendar, accepting item 1.
Mr. Mayor, is the board working there or not for a comment?
What's that now?
It's not working? I'm sorry. I had a comment. I think
You have a comment?
the light's
Okay.
not working, I think. I just, as just to piggyback on that, I'm pretty non-conversant over the bill that we're not naming, that has trailer effects after the midterms. And that's a pretty specific ask too, but I think might be wise for somebody either to engage our legislative people or our staff and just give us a kind of an overview. It could just be a memo or something on social program fallout that's happening after November. Every day I talk to somebody and they've got another little niche thing that I've never heard of is going to end after that, which is just pretty annoying and sobering. So if we could just kind of expand our scope on that, that would be appreciated. Thanks.
All right, very good. And now, we shall go to the vote.
Okay. And again, this is vote for consent calendar. Accept item 1, motion Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman. Go ahead and vote, please.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. All right, very good. We'll go on to the next item then, item 7.
Well, we have to do 5 still, right?
No, 5 was not separate. 5 was, we didn't get pulled separately on that. It was part of the balance of the consent calendar, correct? Correct.
Yes. Item 7 is fiscal year 2026 second quarter review resolution. Recommendation that council C, adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 25129 to approve proposed second quarter Q2 adjustments to FY 2026 revenue and expenditure appropriations as detailed in the attached schedule of proposed Q2 adjustments. And D, adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending position salary control resolution number 25138 for authorized positions for fiscal year 2026. Changes are effective January 10th, 2026.
Mr. DiMartini.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, members of the City Council. My name is Keith DiMartini, Finance Director. I'm here with Ms. Natalie Licoli, our Controller, and Ms. Natalia Glusik, our Budget Manager. It's our pleasure to present an overview of the second quarter financial review for fiscal year 2026. The recommendation, as read by the clerk, is here before you today. Effectively, we're asking the City Council to receive and accept the interim financial statements for the first 6 months ending December 31st, 2025. There are 2 resolutions to adopt. First, the resolution amending the appropriation resolution, including a number of budget adjustments that staff are proposing for this current fiscal year. And then the second resolution is the one amending the salary control resolution for changes to positions as well as salaries. And then also hearing a report for revenue and revenue generating and expenditure control options that staff have been working on in earnest over the last number of months. And then also hear a short report as we're in the current development process for the next fiscal year budget for fiscal year 2027. The agenda flows, as I mentioned earlier, the general fund overview for the current fiscal year. We'll talk about the position changes and the budget option updates. We will also talk about the fiscal year 2027 mid-cycle budget update, some tax considerations, the trends that we're seeing, some of the challenges that we face for next year's budget, as well as the budget hearing schedule. So let me first start with the general fund multi-year forecast, again, a graph that council has seen on a number of occasions. It shows our general fund revenues in the dotted green line, and it shows our general fund expenditures in the solid red line. As you can see, the gap between our revenues and expenditures widens as the years go out after fiscal year 2026 all the way through fiscal year 2030. We do have a structural budget deficit. Every year when our expenditures exceed our revenues, we have an operating deficit requiring the use of reserves to help us balance the budget. On the table on the bottom of the graph shows the revenues and expenditures and what those deficits are projected to be in those years going forward. A couple noteworthy trends on this graph include sort of post-COVID revenues rebounded pretty substantially in fiscal year 2022 with the rebounding of our TOT revenue and sales tax. And you can also see the increase of our revenues from fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2026, which reflects the first full fiscal year of implementation of the recently approved Measure I sales tax rate. This table here is a table representation of the graph that we just saw. It shows our revenues and expenditures and then the projected deficits going forward all the way through fiscal year 2028. It is important to note that we do need to consider the reserve contribution because our city council adopted reserve policy requires that 25% of our annual operating expenditures stay in reserve. And because our expenditures grow every year, the amount of money we need to keep in the reserves need to grow also. So that's that reserve policy target at 25% line. And then right below that line, we are projecting out what we anticipate the ending reserve level to be. If we have operating deficits, that means that we're dipping into our reserves, which means that that difference between the projected reserve level and the target just only continues to widen. And if we continue on this trajectory, all else being equal, staff is projecting that we will fully deplete all of our general fund reserves by the end of fiscal year 2028. So we do have challenges. We are actively working on a number of expenditure control and reduction options, as well as revenue generating options to help us balance our budget, not just right now, but also for multiple years to come. This graph here is a graphical representation of our reserve projection over the next couple of years. And the black line at the top represents the 25% reserve policy target. So you can see by the end of fiscal year 2026, we are projecting to fully exhaust the contingency reserves, which is that 10% reserve policy target set in the reserve policy. And that just continues to deplete thereafter, showing no reserves by the end of fiscal year 2028. This graph here shows in pie chart view our general fund revenues on the left and our general fund expenditures on the right. The pie chart on the left shows that we have a pretty diverse set of general fund taxes, which is great for us. Many cities across California only rely pretty solely on one or two or three taxes, so ours is very broad. On the expenditure side, you can see that the vast majority of our revenues pay for people, about half of them, and then when you pull out the capital expenditures, it's even greater. So it's important to note that that's what those general fund tax dollars fund. So now we'll dive into the general fund specifically as of Q2. And so this is a standard table that we showed to Finance Committee today as well. It shows you what our adopted budget is for fiscal year 2026. And then right next to it is our revised budget for fiscal year 2026. So any change that would occur from the time we adopt the budget to where we are today shows in the revised budget. Those are actions that the council would take to appropriate funds. And it also includes any carryover appropriation from prior year multi-year commitments also go into that revised budget column. And that's the basis representing the Q2 actual column. That is the basis for our staff's development of the fiscal year 2026 projections, showing, and that's the second column from the right, showing the $8.7 million deficit. On the table on the bottom, it shows our Measure C fund. And we do break that out separately because right now 100% of Measure C dollars fund capital, and that's different than operating expenses. And it's very common that we would see the revised budget for expenses in Measure C to be much higher than the adopted budget, Again, that has to do with many of our large capital and infrastructure projects requiring multiple years' worth of appropriation and needing to encumber all of those funds all at the outset of the construction contract. That's a representation of that. This table here summarizes the trends of our general fund taxes. It shows what the adopted and revised budget are for all of them, how much money we have received to date. We're 50% through the fiscal year, through the end of December, and so it's expected that we would see about 50% used in that percentage column. But as you can see, we're actually below that 50% run rate for our largest tax sources: property tax, sales tax. TOT is a little bit higher right now. There's a seasonality component with TOT, with much higher TOT in the summer months. And you can also compare it to where we were at the same point in time last fiscal year, which is that last column. And so you can see some of our revenues have not changed that much at all from where we were at this point last fiscal year. Again, if we have flat revenue, that feels like a hit to our budget because our expenses continue to grow. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. LaCauley.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeMartini. Good afternoon, Mayor Ross and member of the City of the Council. So now I'm going to be representing the general fund expenditure with both the adopted and revised budget, along with half of our fiscal year result in comparison to the revised budget as well as the projection. The general government spent 42% of the revised budget, or 54% if we were to include the encumbrance. Savings were primarily due to lower salary cost. Projections are on target with revised budget. Public safety ended the second quarter at 48.5% of the revised budget, with a 1.6 million decrease in projected year-end spending. The police, the total expenditure of 30.5 million. Due to current vacancy level and spending trend, the department expects to finish below both the adopted and the revised budget. Fire department spent 22.2 million for December. Revised budget was aligned with adopted budget in the first quarter to reflect the higher payroll cost. The department anticipates finishing the year within the updated budget. Thank you. Next, we will speak about the community services. They ended the second quarter below the typical mid-year spending level and is projecting lower year-end spending compared with both the adopted and the revised budget. Park and Recreation spent 46.7% of the revised budget at mid-year. Costs are primarily driven by cost of revenue activities. Year-over-year differences are mainly due to building and vehicle maintenance. Current projections remain aligned with the budget expectation. The library, at the mark of the 6 months, 46% of the revised budget has been spent. Saving occurred due to 2 vacant leadership positions, reducing the payroll cost. As a result, year-end projections are slightly below the budget. Public work spending is at 6.9 million, representing 45% of the revised budget. The department has reduced its year-end projection by 1.5 million, primarily due to 8 staff vacancy. Additional savings are anticipated from discretionary spending as the department continues to closely monitor the expenditure in response to broader general fund budget challenges. Sustainability and resilience is at 43.5% of the revised budget. Current projections remain aligned with the revised fiscal year 2026 budget. Community development is at 7.6 million or 43.7% of the revised budget. The department expects a slight decrease in year-end spending, driven by unspent appropriation for third-party environmental review services. The Measure C sales tax is at 17% of budget. Projects are rolling out gradually, and a substantial share of the appropriated fund will likely be carried forward into fiscal year 27 as the project continues. Non-departmental activity, they reflect the transfer from the general fund to other fund. For this end of second quarter, general fund expenditure total 118.5 million, or 39.9% of the revised budget, with a reduction in revised projection by 5 million. And I'm going to turn it back to Mr. DeMartini for the position and salary changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In the council agenda report, it lists multiple salary and position changes that staff are proposing at this time, along with adjusted salary control resolution associated with these changes. Many of these are position reclassifications that Human Resources reviewed and is recommending for approval at this time. A number of the changes have to do with salary adjustments, particularly related to compaction, being able to achieve that 50% differential between subordinate job classifications. And then there's one position on here that I wanted to highlight to you about how it's proposed to be funded. It's the new position in the fire department for the Emergency Medical Services Manager. It's important to note that although it's a new position and it's a manager position, it is proposed to be funded through keeping an Inspector 3 position vacant, which will be the vast majority of how this position will be funded, as well as the services that this position will be able to provide to some of the enterprise departments specifically and directly, and so that those enterprise departments can also help pay for the cost of this position. And so it's a position that's being proposed very strategically with a plan to fund it in the long term. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Glusek.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini. So as a reminder, we do have a deficit that we do need to treat. And so we did put out to all of the city and also got good suggestions from council and finance committee as well to get a lot of different suggestions about how to become more efficient. It's kind of become an ongoing improvement list. So we have split this into 3 tiers. The first tier, as a reminder, are the things that we can implement fairly quickly. Within the next year, some of them have been implemented already in order to save costs, move costs out of the general fund, or to increase efficiencies. Tier 2 are things that are going to take a little bit more time. We need to do some research, get our arms around what those cost savings might actually be or what the additional revenue generation might be net of costs, et cetera. But they're still worth exploring. We still would like to implement those. And we also have a lot of suggestions, or a few suggestions rather, at Tier 3, which are things that we're not recommending at this time, but we are keeping them on that list for future consideration when the time may be better. Next slide, please. So our prior council direction, which we have followed up on, was to increase the cannabis excise tax as a revenue generator. We could go up to 20% approval. There was a recommendation earlier today at Finance Committee to go up to 8%, which you guys will be able to discuss in further detail, and also to consider additional revenue generation sales opportunities there. We also initiated and completed a poll assessing the viability of revenue tax measures for the November 2026 ballot, which you will also hear more about. And then we analyzed some recreational vehicle camping at the waterfront parking lots. It is important to note the waterfront is an enterprise fund. It will not directly impact general fund. However, that being said, we do have some dredging costs that we need to come up with there. And also there will be, if people are staying camping out at recreational spots at the waterfront, that will bring also a TOT tax and potentially sales tax when people come into the community. The lowest priorities that we were recommended to not follow up on were any kind of closures or reduction of hours at the library, allowing short-term rentals around the city, or to increase parking fees. Next slide, please. So here we have a little update of where we're standing with the Tier 1 General Fund. efforts. So what you'll see on the left is a list of the types of activities that we are engaging in right now, including transferring some positions out of the general fund to enterprise funds. We're not eliminating those positions or necessarily changing what the people are doing, just how they are funded due to if it's appropriate for enterprise to reimburse or to take on those costs. We're also making several minor fee adjustments to help align with the city's protocol to have a full full reimbursement of up to full reimbursement of our activities where we can. There is some library reorganization. This is a moving around of things at the library to help facilitate any kind of their revenue generating activities, such as renting out their areas, and also just to make things a little more efficient over there. Again, not eliminating people, but just rearranging where they're sitting and what they're doing sometimes. We're increasing our parking citation revenues. We're also holding several positions vacant. This is not a long-term solution, but it does allow us a bit of flexibility in reacting to and coming up with new solutions, and gives us a little bit of time to deal with those things. And we're also, our Clean Community, which is in Sustainability and Resilience program, is taking on several of the general fund expenses. I think it's important to note that on the third line in the table to the right, that $3.487 million does include potentially passing the revenue measure on the November ballot. If that does not pass, that number will drop to around $150,000 instead of the $3 million. Next slide. Looking at what some of our departments are doing, some of the savings, if the tax measure is approved by voters, that will go into effect in January 1st of 2027. If we do increase the cannabis excise tax, then that will also be an increase to our general fund revenues. We have improved some of our purchasing procedures for our fire vehicles, namely that we are allowing the process to facilitate purchase of demonstration vehicles. So when those come up, they're less expensive, and they're also get to us sooner by shortening that supply chain time. And we're also reducing inventory at the warehouse, so less of our money's tied up in things on shelves, and we have more fluid cash. We're also consolidating IT. As IT evolves, so does our IT staff. Parks and Recreation are increasing some of their fees to achieve better cost recovery for their existing programs. Police are also looking at reimbursement for some special events, such as Old Spanish Days and Summer Solstice, and also utilizing the funds from the opioid settlement. We're also looking to centralize project management where it would be more efficient to have centralized project management, and eliminating vehicles where we can do that. As I mentioned earlier, we have proposed to bring a tax measure to the ballot in November. Particularly, we were asked to look at a real property transfer tax. After some research, our staff arrived at increasing the current rate of 55 cents per $1,000 to assessing $9.50 per $1,000, only on properties that sell for $3 million or greater. So this would generate approximately $5.1 million each year based on the run rate of how many properties have been sold above $3 million. And that would be effective on January 1st, 2027. We've also looked into increasing the transient occupancy tax, going from 12% to 14%, which will bring in approximately $5.8 million. That will also go into effect on January 1st, 2027. And council may adopt a resolution to prioritize these funding activities, and may also ask us to engage a citizen oversight committee to ensure that the transparency of where we're spending it, similar to and probably being the current Citizen Oversight Committee that looks at Measure C funding. On February 3rd, the Finance Committee recommended that we pursue a general purpose real property transfer tax, which I was just talking about, increasing the rate from 55 cents to $9.50 per $1,000 per property sold over $3 million of $3 million or greater, pardon me. And again, to consider that Citizen Oversights Committee and engaging the existing committee to fill that purpose. And also to discuss the measure with local realtor community and to analyze the impact for commercial properties that were excluded from these numbers. Those commercial properties would be multi-family units and apartment buildings, as well as your general commercial buildings. And then also to consider a resolution prioritizing the funding. And we expect further direction from City Council on that matter on the 3rd of March.
Yep. I think so. I'll do the first. So in prior years, we would have a separate session where we would kind of kick off the budget cycle for the upcoming budget called we used to call it the budget work session. And staff wanted to consolidate and combine what we would typically present in the budget work session with the Q2 report because they are so intertwined. The Q2 report is a very formal, in-depth, thorough process that staff embark on to come up with an updated projection on where we think we're going to end the current fiscal year 2026, and that becomes the basis for our base budget for fiscal year 27 and going forward. And so staff thought it would be really beneficial for the City Council and the public if we tied the two conversations together. So now we've talked about fiscal year 26. We've kind of talked about the overall projections. Now we're going to dive into some of the trends that we're seeing for fiscal year 27, some of the challenges that we need to deal with in fiscal year 27, and also talk about the budget hearing schedule. No. So this slide here shows the budget balancing plan for how we plan to balance the fiscal year 2027 general fund budget. As we showed on an earlier graph for the general fund multi-year forecast, it shows a projected deficit of $14.6 million in the base budget for fiscal year 2027. We have categorized 4 different options for how we plan to balance the budget in fiscal year 2027. The first one would be the implementation of the Tier 1 options, which include both increasing revenues as well as reducing expenditures. That would be around $4 million. Second would be the assumption of if a revenue measure were to be placed on the ballot and passed, an assumption of $2.9 million. Next would be savings that would occur if we are to hold existing vacant positions vacant for a longer period of time. We could reasonably assume that would generate about $1 million. And then finally, there are other savings that are to be determined, working really closely with staff at all levels to determine additional expenditure savings at $5.4 million. That would still result in a small deficit, but a lot of progress helping us balance the budget in fiscal year 2027. As you can see, the first 2 would be ongoing solutions, and then the final 2 would only be temporary. And so those would be solutions that would only be implemented for that one fiscal year. And then if there are issues that come up after fiscal year 2027, we may need to find other solutions. So that's the setting for fiscal year 2027 and the thinking and planning that's going on today. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Glusick.
So with any forecast, you have to make assumptions. So we wanted to lay out what our assumptions are. So given the activity of our sales and transient occupancy taxes, those are leveling off. They're growing at a very slow rate, but they've basically stopped with the speedy growth that we saw post-COVID. We have very strong, as always, property tax growth. It's very steady. Our housing market is fairly solid, so that's good. We also have we've also incorporated all of our known MOU changes, our memorandums of understanding with our negotiating labor groups. So everything that we know we've incorporated, if those agreements have been reached or near being reached, we've incorporated those changes. For those that we haven't, we've assumed a 5% increase in in fiscal year 2026 and 27. But then after that point, we're assuming a 3% increase. It is important to note that the cost of public safety agreements did exceed those assumptions in the budget in fiscal year 2026, and so we have incorporated those into, now that they're known, we have incorporated them into our ongoing forecast. Also, that our pension normal costs and our unfunded actuarial liability, known as the UAL, and medical insurances are all increasing. Inflation is not as bad as it has been in the prior 2 years, but it still is present and on our minds. And also the self-insurance fund, known as the SIF, and other allocations continue to increase with their input costs. Next slide. So as mentioned, our property and real estate transfer taxes are rather strong. The graph on the left shows you our real property taxes. When somebody buys a home that has a strong price, those taxes come in at a fairly stable way. The real property taxes will go up and down a bit because they are tied to how many home sales are made that year. So if there are very few sales, we'll have a lower transfer tax than we would in years that we had several sales or that we had higher dollar value home sales. Next slide. This is showing a 1% tax for our Bradley Burns. Again, since any kind of sales tax is tied to the price of the things that you're buying, you will see an increase with this as prices increase. So you'll see a slight bump in fiscal year 26, but you can also see in the prior few years that it is leveling off and being more stable. If you look at the graph on the right, that shows the change from year to year of our sales tax receipts. And it does show that if you look at the trend, it is fairly flat, but it also shows that Santa Barbara as a city, which is that blue line on top, is a little bit more volatile as opposed to our Santa Barbara County-wide, which is that orange line in the middle, and statewide, which is that gray line on the bottom. But everything, it is a regional issue. It is not just a local issue. Next slide is our Measure C, which is a 1% sales tax, and our new Measure I, which is a 0.5% sales tax. So Measure C was implemented in 2018, which is why you see a low amount in that very first year, but has been fairly stable and growing, has flattened out a bit over the last few years for the same reasons I just pointed out. Measure I is very low in 2025. We did implement it later in 2025, and this is our first full year. We're looking at about 15 million by the end of the year. Next slide. Our transient occupancy taxes have also leveled out. The graph on the right is showing the amount, and the graph on the left, dyslexia strikes again. On the graph on the right is showing the seasonality. I actually really like this graph. It shows the seasonality of both the daily rate, which is the darker green line, and then the lighter green line is showing the hotel occupancy rate. So you see it going up and down with the seasonality from month to month, but you're also seeing that the trend is fairly flat over the last couple of years. Finance Committee, this is our schedule for the City Council public hearings, all public hearings related to the budget. Today is February 24th, and you've just heard our Q2 report and deficit update, and this is currently the budget work session. On April 21st, we are mandated by our city charter to introduce the budget to the City Council and to the public, so you'll be hearing from us with the full overview of the budget. Then on May 5th, we will go to Finance Committee to review the recommended budget, including the fee schedule changes. And on May 12th, we will have one hearing to hear about all of the general fund departments, similar to what we did last year. On May 19th, we will have another hearing about all of the other funded departments, similar to what we did last year. And then after that, on June 9th, we will have council deliberations when we will get final direction from the council to put into the budget. And hopefully, if all goes well, on June 16th, we will adopt the budget. There is one point I wanted to bring out that I forgot to mention, which is that if our revenues are leveling off, this is an issue because our expenditures are still going to increase. And so that is one of the things that we are trying to grapple with, is how to deal with a flat revenue while our expenditures are increasing. And with that, we'll take public comment and discussion.
First of all, any questions from council? Ms. Schned.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I guess I have a question about Measure C. And I guess looking at starting at slide 10, so there, Measure C, the revenues, these are revenues, right? And we adopted that we expected 34.2 million, and then the projected is about 34.2 million. Am I on the right slide?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so well done. So the projections match there. So I guess my question then is on slide 12, the expenditures, 35.1 million adopted budget, fair enough, and we expected that's what we would get in. And then the projection is 78 million?
Yeah, I can answer that, Councilmember Sneddon. Thank you for your question. That is something that perplexes many people. We have multi-year projects that happen. So each year, we budget for projects that will begin in the current year and/or add on to projects that are existing. So if there's a project that was in process last year and still had budget left because it's still going, the police station is an example, that we still have budget that was budgeted at the front end of the project. So that is carried over into the year, and that is the bulk of the reason that you see that really large jump. We had several projects that were just larger multi-year projects that got carried forward.
Thank you. So help me understand. So that adopted budget, first line, what year goes on that column?
So that
budget
the
year.
adopted budget would be for fiscal year 2026. So that was what was adopted back in June of 2025. And then any money that time that was left over when we start the new fiscal year gets carried over into 2026. So the remainder of that amount is prior year budget that has not been spent yet because the project is still ongoing.
Right, but we know that, and we know it's getting paced out, and we know what year we're actually going to be spending it in or plan to be spending it in. So why wouldn't that projected number, we're not going to spend 78 million in 2026?
No, we wouldn't. Some of that will be carried over because we have a policy that we obligate the full amount of a project at the front end of it so that the vendors that are servicing us know that they're going to get paid, et cetera. There's several reasons for that policy at this point. But we know that we're going to spend that amount of money over, say, 5 years. So in the first year, we know we're not going to spend the full amount. We project we're going to spend maybe a fifth of it, maybe 2/3 of it, depending on where we are in the project.
Well, that's the important number that I think should be on the chart, is what are we actually going to spend on it? Is it a fifth? Is it a half? Whatever it is. Like, how do we know if we're meeting our target on this, just the way it's laid out? Like the 35.1 was the expected in, we're matching up with expected in, 35.1 expected out, and then, whoa, 78 million. How much of that 78 million, I mean, do we just assume it's 34.1 or how?
Yeah, I appreciate those questions, Councilmember Sneddon. And I'm kind of pulling up this table here because it's important to break out general fund versus Measure C, because Measure C does pay for capital, and capital has a different trajectory of how the expenses work, and you're pointing that out. We can absolutely include additional information in quarterly reports going forward about, how much is sort of actually spent and like how much will be carried forward. We can definitely include more granularity. We do include information like that in the Measure C annual accountability report that goes to the Citizens Oversight Committee, so we can definitely leverage that reporting for this quarterly review purpose. In that projection column, let's see, what page was that on? It was on this page, right? What's in the projected column would also not, projection isn't just actual spent, like expense. It could be an encumbrance. Like, so when you let out a construction contract, we might spend a portion of it, but then the rest of it is fully encumbered. It's locked up to pay for that contract. It also represents that locked up portion of the contract. And so it's both.
So maybe that should be in our adopted budget if we know we're encumbered and we're holding on to it and it has to be sitting there. It's just well, you understand what I'm saying. It's not just the narrative of it, but it's also, maybe you could answer for me as a question, what is the actual projected 2026 expected expenditure of that? Is it 35.1 million, or is it going to come in under that or over?
Councilmember Sneddon, I don't have that exact number in this report because that's not how we presented it, but we would be happy to go and get that number and analyze it, and then we can report back.
Thank you. Because if it's only going to be $12 million, say, then we don't have a $44 million deficit there. Or if it's going to be 60 million of it, I mean, it's a huge number, and it's such a big part of the budget, so it's hard to read it without that.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I have just a few questions. And for the public who wants even more in-depth, or if you have insomnia, you can go back and watch the Finance Committee meeting earlier today. So just a couple quick ones on slide, let's go to slide 23. This is just more in looking at our structural deficit again. Asked this question earlier at Finance. You've already gone over it, but again, could you go into what are we doing in addition to tax measures or raising revenue to address the deficit in terms of controlling expenditures and reducing our expenditures? You mentioned earlier things like insurance and those types of things. So if you could kind of get into what our expenses are, but what we're doing outside of raising taxes to control the deficit here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Councilmember Freeman. It is our common practice that every quarter when we're doing our projection work that we are looking at ways of controlling and reducing our expenditures. It's ingrained in staff as part of our annual budget process. We do this annually, regardless of what our financial condition is. We're always looking for ways to implement efficiencies, process improvements, implementing technology, streamlining our services. We've recently consolidated different functions where we've been able to bring different functions together, primarily like in the IT team. We've been able to consolidate resources in that group, other resources as well. We've been able to contract very aggressively with some of our contracts to be able to get better pricing. We do simple things like, do we really need to buy additional paper and toner and printers? And we see our equipment that we have, using them to their fullest life capacity. We only replace vehicles if we need to. Just the preventative maintenance is important too, but really not spending unless we need to. So it's ingrained in the way that our staff think and approach the budget. Every day we're looking for savings, and so that will continue to be delaying projects if we need to, finding efficiencies, holding positions vacant and leveraging existing staff resources to be able to do that work if necessary, delaying projects. We look at all of it.
And one example would be, you're looking for economies of scale. When we went to finance the police station, we also needed to finance Dwight Murphy Field. So that's an expensive, time-consuming process. So by incorporating two projects instead of one, it saved us a ton in that sense.
Yes, Councilmember Freeman, that's correct. It saved us the sense of the upfront, like administrative costs to get the debt issuance completed, but we also probably got a better interest rate because the debt issuance amount was larger as well.
And then can you speak to, because you meant in a previous slide there was talking about pensions, can you talk about the 115 trust that we implemented a couple of years back?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So council gave direction to open up the Section 115 trust, which is a pension trust, to help us reduce our pension obligations and our expenses going forward. We did that using the surplus in the general fund that was recognized back in fiscal year 2022. We put just a little under, it was a little under $2 million, $1.8 million if I remember correctly, into a trust. And that trust has been performing exceptionally well compared to other benchmark indicators, as well as our city's own our own investment portfolio. And so the balance in that fund is over $2.2 million now. And if we can eventually put more money into it, we will eventually be able to send that money over to CalPERS, which will draw down the liability on our balance sheet, as well as our annual unfunded actuarial liability payment that we have to make to CalPERS.
And we're getting a higher interest rate than, or return rate, I should say, than what CalPERS. Just a couple more questions on slide 18. Just wanted to raise this in terms of the fee adjustments or holding the fees for community events and festivals. I think that's on this slide. Sorry, the wrong slide, slide 19. One of the issues that comes up is when there's community events and festivals, or families are using the recreational opportunities through our Parks Department, and making sure those are affordable so that we don't price out the nonprofits that are putting on the festivals, or families that might not be able to afford summer camps and things like that. So when we're talking about cost recovery, are those included in that? And then can you speak to the policy that we have and if we're going to get to review that to make sure that we're taking those into consideration as well?
Yes, Councilmember Friedman, absolutely. So any fee change proposal that staff brings before the Finance Committee and City Council, we will also articulate where that fee change, how it is in line with the City Council adopted cost recovery and revenue policy. There are different tiers of cost recovery that are optimal to achieve depending on what the fee is for providing what type of service. If the fee is being charged for a program that provides greater benefit to the community than just the one individual that might be participating in a program, that fee theoretically doesn't have to be full cost recovery because there's a greater public benefit. But if a fee is being charged for one single participant to participate in a program and it only benefits that one person, like for example, someone taking a recreation class, well then that fee should really be 100% cost recovery because there's no other sort of like greater good or greater benefit potentially. And so there's this tiered approach that staff analyze every time a fee change is being proposed, and we bring that to the full City Council during the budget process.
Okay. So we'll have a chance to revisit all that in terms of fees to make sure we're not pricing out community events and festivals or people from accessing our Parks and Rec programs. Okay, and then my last question, if you could pull up slide 5. And this gets into the reserves. So according to this, and you went over this earlier, by the end of this year, if we don't take any action this year or next year, which we are taking action, but if we didn't, then we would go through our contingency reserve this year, and then by the end of 2 years from now, we would go through the disaster reserves.
That is correct.
And then getting back to issues such as insurance, the wharf, and this was brought up earlier again at finance with our finance director, or our waterfront director. Can you speak to the dredge and whether that's the dredging and the lack of federal funds right now and whether that's included in these numbers?
Yes, Councilmember Freeman, thank you for that question. Right now, the cost of the dredging program, which is currently paid for by the federal government, if the waterfront department at the city had to take on that expense, that is not incorporated into this model. Right now, that costs around $4 million a year to dredge the channel, and there's one more dredge that's coming up in the next month or so. And so waterfront staff is actively working with the Army Corps of Engineers to determine if we can still advocate for and get funding going forward. If we're unsuccessful in doing so, then the waterfront department would need to be responsible for funding dredging going forward. Otherwise, the harbor runs the risk of not being operable. And so that would have to be borne out of raising the revenues that they can raise themselves. The two revenues that they can raise themselves a little bit easier than changing sort of the lease agreements for their long-term tenants would be parking fees and slip fees. And both of those would have to have a substantial increase from their current rates to be able to generate enough revenue to pay for the annual dredging budget. If not, if there's not enough revenue generated from that, the waterfront enterprise fund will have to be leveraged through its own contingency and disaster reserves. And if there aren't enough funds in their reserves, then the general fund, unfortunately, is the backstop. It has to pay for it.
So there could be, so we are taking that into consideration in terms of our planning. It's not reflected here, but there could be a scenario where some of that $4 million a year might need to be paid for out of the general fund. Okay.
That's correct.
And then lastly, I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier, just on the cost of like insurance for our buildings, because it's important for the public to understand some of the costs that are outside of our control. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, the
That's
insurance.
my last question.
Absolutely, no problem. The insurance industry definitely has changed over the years. What it takes for us to insure the approximately 400 facilities that the city owns and operates has gone up 20% annually over the last 3 to 4 years. None of our revenues grow at that rate, right? And those assets are vital to the staff that work in those buildings and the services that we provide to the community in those facilities. Those facilities have to stay in good working order. They have to be insured in case there's an accident that might occur. Our property insurance is leveraged, and it would be leveraged if there was a natural disaster. We've leveraged them multiple times over the last couple of years for flood damage that has occurred in multiple assets. Our property insurance program is very important. So that's just one example of how the economics around the insurance industry has caused greater distress on our expenditures to be able to insure our assets adequately.
All right. Mr. DiMartini, you mentioned real briefly vehicles and different ways of looking at how we acquire those assets or dispose of those assets. Can you go on that just a little bit, please? Are we talking about eliminating certain non-utility vehicles? Are we talking about leases versus purchases? What does all that mean?
Yeah, Mayor Rouse, thank you for that. I think staff are always looking at different models. I know the leasing model has been reviewed from time to time. I'm not sure a decision has been made on that at this time. But we do have sort of our fleet replacement model, looks at useful life and the wear and tear on vehicles. Like the police department, for example, their vehicles have much more wear and tear than maybe some other vehicles. But the goal of maintaining our vehicles in sort of a cycle, it adds to their useful life, and so it could push out the big expense for having to replace some of our really expensive vehicles. We have successfully entered into lease purchase agreements for the purchase of, I think it was 3 large fire apparatus over the last couple of years. We got an incredibly great interest rate with implementing that program, worked very closely with the fire chief and his staff on that, as well as fleet. So we have done it successfully in the past. We'd be happy to look at that again in the future.
No, but just thinking about that, especially when they came up with the fire apparatus or the large, like the vacuum trucks, whatnot, is that leasing can be more expensive over time, but in terms of times when we have cash flow issues, it can be a rather handy thing. Plus, we don't have an asset that depreciates on our hands, and we could move it over that way. So, all right, are there further questions from council? Okay, I haven't got there yet. Are there any public comments online?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll now bring it back to council for deliberation. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have we chatted about most of this stuff earlier today, so just a couple of public comments. It's after, I don't know, several years of trying, I'm happy to finally get to a point where Visit Santa Barbara is forming a task force to talk about festivals and events, recruitment, vetting, curating, specifically targeting the shoulder months. We have as many shoulder months where occupancy is down at 70% or lower as we do high months where occupancy is above 70%. And many of those months, like March and April, September, October, continue to have pretty pleasant weather. And I'll save you my rant on what a 10,000 resident town of Mammoth does all summer long every weekend and makes our TOT look like we're stepchildren. But there's opportunities there, and I'm happy at least that somebody's getting something off the ground to plug that away too, because those plateauing numbers for TOT are concerning, particularly when we have the infrastructure and the beds and the empty facilities sitting around for at least 4 good months of the year just going unused because nobody's investing in the time to chase those down. So looking forward to seeing that. Then the only other comment I have is just going to be my broken record. You hear from me through this whole process, and that's just kind of the mantra while the team's all in the room that it's clear to me on the tail end of my time here that the definition of a full-service city that we've had historically is going to change drastically in the next decade. And we'll have a different definition of a full-service city, just because there's absolutely no way we can chase those numbers on the graph that eventually get down to reserves of 0. There's not enough taxing and not enough revenue out there, I believe, that we can put on people in this community to remedy that. So we're going to have some hard choices to make on what that looks like, whether it's doing more with less, whether it's just doing less, whatever that may be. But it's clear to me that we can't continue on this track of needing to spend money leading to needing to go raise revenues. We need to get to a point where we've got a clear baseline of what we want to do to spend money on, but we're not spending against next year's revenue chase. We're actually maybe perished the thought that we'd get to a point where we'd have multiple years of actually welcoming more money into the folds to do things that we want to do from a discretionary standpoint than the basic services and programs that we're offering in the city. And that's going to look a lot different than it has during my lifetime and in everybody else's lifetime. And it's going to be really tough and really hard. But I think it just seems clear that that's the direction that needs to be one of the guiding points in these in this, that we're not going to keep gaining revenues at $10 million a year to have another $10 million to spend. We have to look for a point to stabilize what we do what we can, do it well, and then make sure that we're not going past that point from an expense standpoint. So it's the start of budget season. Aren't I something to look forward to? Yeah, thanks.
So joy in the morning there, Michael. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you. First, I have a question. At what point do we start planning for the considerable expense of the fire station upgrades? When do we start?
Yeah, so we've undertaken both the fire facilities needs assessment and the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. My guess is that preparation of those studies will probably take about a year. So when we come back with those recommendations, that's when we would start to talk about how do we plan for that.
Okay, thank you. So that's a little ways out. First, we need to understand it and then talk about it. Okay. So I guess as this is sort of our kickoff a little bit of our budget season, just priority setting. We've done priority setting, but I'm going to lay forward what I think are some, for myself, budget principles. I think, high priority to maintain the services that prioritize community safety and belonging. So some that we traditionally think of and some that we might not traditionally be thinking of in terms of community that's particularly intimidated and under target right now for that sense of belonging. And I think it's time to really think about in our budget priorities how we adjust for that and adjust for those who are most impacted. I want to say it really clearly here that not one of our local dollars, not one local dollar for cooperation of any kind with ICE federal agents. No access to parking, no access to any buildings, no access to their own protected parking, nothing, not one local dollar. I think we need to prioritize services for members who are most impacted by loss of federal funding and support. We've started to look at that, but I think it's really time to be in our budget process looking at who is most impacted in our communities. I also don't want our fees to be too high for things that do have community benefit. We've talked about this, but I'll lay it out here as we're heading into the season. I don't think we should be charging too much money for a drum circle, things like that. I also don't think we should be charging too much when our facilities are used for community benefit for things like community wellness trainings or community protection trainings or different benefits like a community event like a Dia de los Muertos event or something like that. Clearly, we would need to make that up in other ways. And I think we have the in lieu fees study. I'm sure that will be coming to us, but we really need those in lieu fees to be much higher to compensate for the inclusionary affordable housing and looking at that. I do think that we could look at cost savings and revenue generation further. But I think what we're talking about here, $5 million, $14 million over time, clearly we cannot use our reserves up to zero. That's never going to be the plan, and we need to plan for it. And I'll propose now that Measure C should be reevaluated in terms of what we are allowing it to be spent for. I think the whole fund could go for public and community safety. So the police station is already underway. That's already been planned for, encumbered, and earmarked. But I think Measure C, we really need to look at it in terms of once that has been all planned and being paid for, how else could we be using Measure C money that has to do with community safety, and not just public safety with police and fire, but also building those community networks where community can be looking out for each other. And I think that in our budget, we should be supporting that. I also want to put forward here that we need to be looking at exploring matching dollars when you have neighborhood associations or different groups who are paying for community safety for themselves. And one example is Firewise Communities, who put in their own money toward, goats on the hillside, clearing. I think we should have a program where we're able to do matching dollars for those types of things, even in very tight budgets. Some of these things are $14,000 here or there to help community members who are keeping the rest of the city safe also by keeping fire risk down, helping with that. So those are different things in terms of where to spend in dollars. And I think we could be receiving more dollars in different ways, and we're exploring those revenue generation ideas. And then I think as we're looking at our budget priorities, really emphasizing that we value our city employees, and that's, to me, of utmost importance.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to, thank our finance department, but all of our departments, because you've been leading the effort to try to come up with creative solutions on how to increase revenues, but also control expenditures within the organization that are not new taxes. And that led to the 200 recommendations that came forward to us. And the numbers don't lie. If we don't take action, we will go through our reserves, including our disasters, within 2 years, and that's without a disaster. And unlike COVID or other times, we cannot rely on the federal government with FEMA to reimburse us to the extent that they used to. So we have to really focus on not only revenue generation, but also looking at how we can control our expenditures. At the end of the day, the budget, it's the most important thing we do, because if we have a budget that is in order, that's how we fund affordable housing, that's how we fund public safety, that's how we fund libraries and parks. And that's where we need to go in that direction, to really look at our expenditures and new revenue opportunities. Some of those have come up that are very creative. And so with that, I don't want to say I look forward to the discussion coming up, because it's going to be daunting, but in a way, that's why we're all up here. So I do look forward to the challenge of trying to figure out how we're going to control our expenditures and look at revenue enhancements as well. So with that, I have nothing else at this time.
Oh, my God. All right, very good. So I'm going to try to hit the ball down the middle between Mr. Jordan and Ms. Sneddon in terms of what the budget is going to look like and the forward is going to look like. We are, in fact, a full-service city, but it doesn't necessarily mean oodles and oodles of programs. We've got the basic things we've got to take care of, the basic things that the taxpayers expect out of their tax revenues, which are, number one, obviously, public safety. And their third biggest one, of course, is Parks and Rec, and things that we need to do maintenance-wise, but it's the basic nuts and bolts of the city. We have to be able to stay in our lane, particularly with the budget. We cannot afford to go and fund outside sources and social programs. In some cases, maybe we can, but it's not something we're able to do. If we go outside of our normal general fund budget parameters, we're going to end up in the situations like we are today. Now, today is a time when most agencies are struggling with their general fund budgets. That's because revenues have simply not kept up with expenditures. We're not alone. We've actually got a very highly rated finance department and highly rated budget system, but it's important that when we talk about, and due respect to Ms. Sneddon, we talk about looking at Measure C differently. I'm looking at, we've asked for two major budget things in the last, but since 2017 or 18, whenever it was, in 2020, when we had Measure C and Measure I. That's $45 million of outside revenue that we've increased the budget by in terms of revenues in these last few years. For us to go forward again, which we're talking about, and ask for something else, we're going to have to get people to say, trust us. So if we have something that we've established, and we change the rules later on, we're not going to have that community trust. It's really important that the community has a lot of faith in what we're doing and what we're saying up here. It's really important, as we talked about earlier, for our staff and our people to recruit and retain good people. It's up to city administrator to be their employer. It's not up to us. It's up to us to provide the services. And what does that mean? That means to provide the services, oftentimes, you're going to have to compete to recruit and retain the people you need. The ups and downs, the thrills and chills of being an employer, which I did for most of my adult career, now fall on Ms. McAdoo. I'm happy to hand that over to her, but it's up to us to make sure the revenue's there to provide the tools she needs in order to have the kind of staff that we expect to going forward and maintaining our city the way it is. So once again, focusing on the general fund. What does it mean? What are the priorities? There's a lot of stuff each of us would like to do, a lot of stuff each programs we'd like to participate in, a lot of things. But, you know, when things happen in the federal government, when things happen in the state government, we may or may not be able to be the fallback, even if we want to. You know, it's going to be important to make sure that we do precisely what the people that pay all these taxes, and they pay dearly to live here, that they get what they expect. And those are the nuts and bolts. Those are the basic things. And our budget is a little perilous at the moment. I think there are other areas we can do revenue raising, mostly by enhancing business opportunities. And I think there's a lot out there that we're missing right now. But in terms of how we spend the money, what we dedicate the money to, we're going to have to really make some tough, this is going to be a tough choice year. And so I do appreciate what the finance department has done thus far. Not the happiest bit of news I've ever had in my life, but they've done a good job with it. So going forward, I'm actually a little more optimistic about our ability to do reasonable things and make the tough choices and go forward. With that, if there are no more comments, I would entertain Mr. Jordan.
So I'll make the motion to approve staff recommendations B, C, and D, accept the fiscal year budget, adopt the two resolutions.
That's the first by Mr. Jordan,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Friedman. Okay, may we have the vote if there's no further discussion?
And this is a motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Councilmember Freeman for the staff recommendations in their entirety. Yes. Go ahead and vote, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am going to retake attendance to indicate that Councilmember Harmon is not
right.
here, so one moment for that.
She screwed it up and she's not even here. Amazing.
And again, this is just showing attendance. Okay, now this is the vote on the motion.
It was.
It was.
It'd be
Let's
the
try it again.
fastest vote in the West.
Okay. I won't breathe on it.
Okay, the motion passed unanimously with all present, Ms. Harmon absent. Okay, with that, we'll go to committee assignment reports and staff announcements. Ms. Ned.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Attended the Elected Leaders Forum to address homelessness, discussed funding and policy program implementations, attended the Chamber of Commerce Public Policy meeting with several of you as well. Also attended with the Santa Barbara International Film Festival with the delegation from Lithuania to go see the movie Not Made for Politics, and then enjoyed time with the filmmakers and the delegation from Lithuania. And there's maybe some interest in having a sister city discussion. It was very, very fun meeting with the delegation. The CD, HSC confirmed their scores, and they'll have another meeting tonight to move forward for funding. Creeks committee heard about the airport climate adaptation plan and also invasive plant removal program. Water Commission, really great meeting on the enhanced urban water management plan update on demand. And so looking at the baselines and what happens if there's job growth, housing growth, climate change, water rate changes, or demand creep. And so we're in good shape planning for the future on that. But also upcoming is a big study for the California aqueduct subsidence. And this is going to be a major issue affecting capacity of the aqueduct. So we'll be looking at that in the future. Attended the Women's Fund Forum on preventing homelessness. It was a great panel. Kachuma Operation and Management Board meeting yesterday. Nothing much to report there, except for there's just a lot of water, which is good. And attended the Food and Beverage group last week. And also members of SB Act were at that meeting to give updates on how they could be working together to address some of the issues in downtown.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended the Women's Fund Roundtable on Homelessness, a great presentation to a nearly packed Center Stage Theater audience. Also, the reading ambassadors at McKinley Elementary School. I know Councilmember Gutierrez was there and others, and it was great to see all the students there. And then the last one was the alternate attended the SB-CAG monthly meeting, and the SB-CAG board unanimously approved signing on for the train. And so we have joined San Luis and Ventura counties, and that's going to go forward with the Amtrak. It's very innovative going forward, and thank you to Mayor Ausbin, the Losan rep there. And that means that we will potentially have the commuter rail at an appropriate time in the mornings to get here starting this year, maybe even later this spring. So that's going to be a major change for commuting, and it's everyone was in a celebratory mood at that time.
Yeah, thank you. That is nice because we were going to do the thing with the Metrolink, but now it's going to be with the Amtrak people, and we will have a train that comes up from somewhere in Simi Valley, and they'll be in Goleta by 8 o'clock in the morning, and then returning. That one will be turning in late morning, but then there'll be other trains and other modes of transportation later in the afternoon. So we may actually have some real live commuters on there. Okay, if there are no other reports, we are going to adjourn back to our continued closed session. There'll be no report out from there.